Psychogeography is a 2006 work of social theory by Merlin Coverley. Coverley is the author of several books on related topics of cultural commentary, but information is hard to find about him online, so I won't attempt to introduce him by the conventional methods. I simply don't know where he was born, what his educational achievements are, or what he's working on now. Not that it matters, a good book speaks for itself. Coverley has two mountains to climb in this book. Firstly, he has to convince the reader that psychogeography isn't just a made-up label for something nebulous and possibly incoherent. Secondly, he has to give it a cultural pedigree. He has to locate its alleged practitioners in history. In effect, he has to reinvent it. That's a tall order, and to fulfill it, he has to demote the figure with whom it's nowadays most intimately associated, the 20th century French thinker Guy Debord. Debord died in 1994 at the age of 62. He defined psychogeography as the study of specific effects of the geographical environment, consciously organised or not, on the emotions and behaviour of individuals. Coverley thinks Debord's contribution to psychogeography has been wildly exaggerated, and that it wasn't even central to situationism, the movement he founded. His major work, The Society of the Spectacle, makes no use of it, and situationism's dérives, unplanned wanderings through Paris, which were probably meant as semi-military reconnaissance preparatory to a revolution, never amounted to anything worthy of mention. For Coverley, psychogeography has a long pre-Debordian history and is largely a tale of two cities, London and Paris. London possesses the older tradition, which begins with William Blake and continues with Daniel Defoe, particularly the latter's 1722, A Journal of the Plague Year, which is a fictional story of a nightmarish journey through the city in 1665. But for Coverley, Thomas de Quincey, 1785 to 1859, is psychogeography's first real practitioner. De Quincey, writes, is a prototype for the obsessive drifter, allowing his imagination to shape and direct the perception of his environment, his purposeless drifting at odds with the commercial traffic and allying him to the invisible underclass whose movements map the chaotic and labyrinthine aspects of the city. The French version of psychogeography begins with Charles Baudelaire and his description of the flaneur, or solitary city wanderer, in an 1863 essay entitled The Painter of Modern Life. Baudelaire took inspiration from Edgar Allan Poe's 1840 A Man of the Crowd, and both were heavily influenced by De Quincey. However, Coverley is sceptical as to how far the flaneur is central to psychogeography, citing Rebecca Solnit. The only problem with the flaneur is that he did not exist, except as a type, an ideal, and a character in literature. He locates a more authentic psychogeographical sensibility in Arthur Rimbaud's Robinson, a purely mental traveller named after Defoe's Robinson Crusoe, and especially in the rather later surrealist movement. André Breton's 1928 novel Nadia is a dreamlike account of the mysterious Parisian wanderings of a young woman who seems to personify the city itself, a Louis Aragon's 1926 Paris Peasant, which describes two walks the author took through the city. Coverley praises Aragon's unplanned combination of local history and biography, political and philosophical debate, and digressive style. He writes, "If there's one book that can be identified as a handbook for today's breed of psychogeographer, this is it." Ultimately, though, he's more convinced by the London tradition than the Parisian one. After De Quincey, the thread's taken up by Robert Louis Stevenson in The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, where London appears as a dreamscape that reflects the psychology of the novel's protagonists, and a nightmarish image to set against the visions of De Quincey and Blake. London psychogeography differs from its Parisian counterpart in having a significant occult flavour. After Stevenson came the horror writer Arthur Machen, then the esoteric amateur archaeologist Alfred Watkins, who in 1925 proposed the notion of ley lines, linking sites of significance in prehistoric Britain. Watkins's ideas were resurrected by the counterculture of the 1960s and went on to influence the three figures who Coverley considered, in 2006, to be the leading lights of contemporary psychogeographical theory: Ian Sinclair, Peter Ackroyd, and the filmmaker Stuart Home. Ackroyd and Sinclair are linked by an incorporation of the occult into their writings, from an esoteric alignment of London churches to notions of chronological resonance within which time may become distorted, although it's difficult to tell how seriously the reader is meant to take that. Stuart Home seems concerned to undermine it. Coverley describes him as a wind-up merchant par excellence. For all its virtues, the reader of this book might be left with a lot of questions about psychogeography. Is it even a real thing? The text concludes with a list of related websites. The London Psychogeographical Association seems to have ceased operating some time ago. Perhaps there's a reason for that. However, Gareth E. Rees's 2019 Car Park Life and his 2020 Unofficial Britain, which I reviewed on this channel some time ago, have arguably given it a new lease of life, and outside of London. I'm not sure whether Rees would call himself a psychogeographer, but his work more than fulfills the brief. But even that doesn't obscure the bigger problem. Does psychogeography have any meaning, value, or even future? You decide.